In this video, I want to do some seascape photography with you. We go together to the field to take some pictures, and then we'll come back here in the office, in my home office, and edit one of those images together. Let's go to the coast and take some pictures.
I'm very close now where I parked my car. I can already hear the waves crashing to the shore. So I'm super excited to go there and see what's going on there. Looks like the winter is not going anywhere this year. Well, it's typical for Swedish winters. Usually cold days and the snow come back even in April sometimes. So I think this is not too unusual. Still, always it surprised me. It is quite windy and cold today, but I see that the sky is opening, so that's great. I might get some beautiful sky, but I don't think I'm gonna get a very colorful sunset because it's overcasted, sort of. So here I am. I'm not forcing myself to any kind of image. I don't have any image in my mind that I have to create today. Since Lofoten, I came to the sea once before, and it was actually midnight, and we came to see Northern Light, which didn't happen not quite well actually when we were there. So I just had a beautiful moonlight, and I used that to do some long exposure seascape photography, practicing in the midnight. But I was fortunate enough to see Aurora for 5 minutes, and I managed to take this picture. Anyway, let's go and try to find a composition here, because I see that there are a lot of potentials and many motifs that I can work on. Let's go. It's not hard to find leading lines here. It's very hard to find something to lead the eyes too. One of the biggest differences here compared to somewhere like Lofoten is you don't have a powerful backdrop or background, some things that you use as your main subject. Every leading line here leads to nothing, leads to horizon or some rocks, boring rocks in the sea. Still, I don't have any idea what I'm gonna shoot. Oh, finger crossed, finger crossed. Wish me good luck, guys. Here is my first composition. Sorry about the wind. I found this little rock formation here, which is kind of like triangular shapes that pointing toward the background island here. Nothing very special about this shot, and I'm not super convinced with this composition. I just moved my camera a little bit around to see how I can balance the image and how I can make these lines to point actually towards the island, because they are pointing a little bit off to the right side of the image instead of the island directly. So I moved the camera a little bit back and forth to the left and right to see if I can fine-tune this composition. Then when I found something that I think it's the best I can do right now, I did a test shot, and then I put ND filter ND64 to drag my shutter. Now for my settings, 20mm f16 ISO 160, and shutter speed is about 10 seconds. Let's see if this shot works. Here's the shot. I think I have found a composition that I like, and that excites me more than the first one. And this is this rock formation in front of me. The shape of the lines and the shapes and everything here is quite exciting for me. I have put on polarizer on the lens, and it's halfway polarizing the scene because I like to have a little bit of sheen on the side of the rocks. Oh, it's so cold, I'm shivering now. Yeah, f16 to make sure that I have everything in focus. ISO 160 and shutter speed half a second.
I felt something doesn't quite work, and that was the patches of the snow I have in this image. So I removed them in Photoshop, and also I darkened down this strap of eyes on top left corner of the image to create this one. Besides, I added a little more contrast, and I think that helps the viewer to see what I want to show in this image. Now I'm very happy with this one.
Now I'm taking picture of this main scene. I want to lower the shutter speed as much as I can, about 4 minutes. So I put on the 10 stop ND filter. Because it's windy, I turned on my in-body image stabilization, which I'm not sure if it's gonna help or if it's gonna ruin the shot. I will see. 2 minutes left. So finger crossed. I took some pictures with 8 seconds shutter speed, but I want to really smooth out the water, the choppy water of this sea here. I have the same rocks formation that I was taking picture of earlier, and I have all of these nice lines here. From what I can see in back of my camera, it kind of works. I like it. So let's see how it looks like when I download it on my computer and look at it in a bigger screen.
I felt that this image is okay, but it needed something more. So I walked into the scene, I standed on that rock and took an image with faster shutter speed with myself. Combined these two images in Photoshop to create this one.
I walked through the scene to put myself inside the scene and take a portrait with the same scene. When I came here, I actually liked this scene, the opposite direction. So I'm shooting now from where I was shooting before towards the where I was standing, basically. What I like about this shot is this beautiful lines and red rocks here. That's kind of a blanket of the rocks and water. Here, that's the water comes between the rocks. I have put on the ND64 again on the lens to lower the shutter speed to something like 50 seconds. And it works quite well, I like that.
I'm back now. I'm super excited to show you my workflow when I'm editing this image. I decided to edit this image from this photo shoot, not only because I like this image, but also because I think this image can show you some of my workflow when it comes to editing. Let's just jump into the editing in Capture One and edit this photo. First thing first, when I look at this image, it's embarrassingly tilted, so I have to level the horizon. This is the biggest issue I have with this image for now. And I'm simply grab this straighten tool here and draw a line on the horizon. I like to crop the image first, so I'm gonna grab my crop tool, and perhaps I'm gonna go with the 16:9. I have been experimenting with this photo with different aspect ratios, and I think 16:9 works the best for this image. I might crop a little bit from this side. Well, I guess that's good. Next step is to fix the white balance. So I guess this image is a little bit in the cold side. I can warm it up a little bit. But I will come back to white balance if I need it to adjust it later when we bring out all of those contrasts and the colors out of this image.
Now, what I'm going to do is because I see that there are some good texture in the sky, but they are hidden because they all are in the highlight. So I'm going to reduce the highlight to reveal some of those texture in the sky by dropping the highlight. And I'm not going to increase shadows too much because I like to have more contrast, but I don't want to create a very flat look. And when I'm looking at the histogram, I think that this is a well exposed image, so I don't need to do much recovery. Well, to be honest, the lighting wasn't that challenging either. What else I want to do to this image comes to different adjustment that I wanted to put in different layers. But before we go further, let's increase the saturation just a little bit here. One option I learned that you can do in Capture One is to, whatever you have done to the background layer, you can move it to a new adjustment layer. So just right click on the name of the background and you can move the background adjustment to a new layer. That's great because if I turn off this adjustment layer, I'm gonna reset the image to before any of edits. Still I have the crop. It's not like when you completely reset the image. So it will keep the crop. Okay, now let's turn on this layer again and let's name it base. You can see already this image has been elevated from something that's cool and flat to something a little bit more interesting. But I'm going to push the contrast and push the values a little bit more in this image. So I'm going to create a new field adjustment layer. So I'm click on this small arrow next to the plus, and a new field adjustment layer is what I want to choose. It creates a new layer, but it fills the mask, so it affects the whole image. I'm going to call it contrast. We can increase the contrast, of course, a little bit, but sometimes I do different ways to add contrast. One of them is curve that I usually use when I edit my images. I tend to use curve adjustment quite a lot. And I consciously put points on the where I want to make darker or brighter, depends on if I wanted to affect the shadows or highlights or midtones. I can rise up blacks a little bit, and here is before. If I lower the opacity, here is after. As you can see, it also brings out some texture, some saturation, and the image becomes a little bit more exciting. Now, let's work a little bit on the sky. This time I'm just click on the plus to create an empty layer, and then I select the linear gradient filter, holding shift to create a straight line or a straight filter. Drag it down, big, nice and soft. Let's call this layer sky. What I'm gonna do in this one first is working with levels. I want to bring out more data out of the brightness, and the best way to do it is in levels. But if you don't want to use level, you can of course use the highlight to reduce some highlights and bring out some more details in the sky. For this example, because I have a lot of data here that they are very, very flat, so they are very close to each other, I'm gonna move this middle slider in the levels, push it to the right, and that brings out a lot of data, a lot of colors and texture out from this top part of the image, and basically make it a little bit darker as well. Actually, I'm making a whole video about level, so subscribe to the channel and don't miss out that one, because there will be a lot of information and cool data that I will share with you about levels. Okay, now I also want to increase the saturation a little bit in the sky. Perhaps blue colors are a little bit too saturated, so let's select the blue colors and drop the saturation in blue colors and maybe make them a little bit less blue. And these purple, yellowish colors in the sky, that we can increase the saturation a little bit and drop the hues just a little bit. Let's have a look before and after this adjustment to the sky.
I think that's good. Still, I want to reduce the saturation of the blue colors a little bit more. That's very nice. Next thing I want to do with this image is fix some of the imperfections in the image. We have a little bit of dust spots or rather water droplets on the lens that I'm going to fix. To do that, simply I grab the remove a spot tool. So to find them, let's create a new adjustment layer, increase the contrast and reduce the brightness so we can spot those dust spots. So one click here, one click here, and let me zoom in, check the sky, because they are mostly visible in the sky. Maybe this corner is a little bit needs some refinement, but I think that's okay. If we remove this adjustment layer, no one will see it. The next step is to remove some of the other distraction that I have in the image. To be specific, I don't like this patch of snow that they are very close to the edge of the frame because they are pulling the eye towards the left side too much. I like the eye travel through this corner or bottom corner and go to this middle section and then travel to the background of the sky. But these are a little bit distracting now. So that's also an easy fix with the healing brush. And I'm gonna paint over this patch of snow on this corner. And yeah, I guess that's good. Maybe remove this one too. No, this is not what I want this tool to do. Maybe I will grab something from sample from here. It's this little island in far background on the left side again. If I zoom in here, you might notice that there is something on the horizon. It's not helping the image at all. It's taking a little bit of attention, I guess. So again, with the healing brush, with the smaller brush, I can easily fix that. Let's paint over this area. Move that. Maybe remove this little stone on the corner too. Okay, that I think improved the image quite a lot from this to this. Now the next thing I think I need to improve in this one, this is a little bit annoying for me, is that these rocks here are very close to the horizon, and horizon is much darker than the sky. It creates some sort of weird contrast here that I don't really like. So to fix that, I'm gonna create a new layer and I call it horizon. I can paint over it or I can use a radial gradient filter. So I basically create a very big gradient filter here, make it soft. To fix the problem I explained now, I will try to reduce the contrast and brighten up that section. That will also help me to create more depth in the image. First thing I will try is to add some haze to this. So with the negative value to dehaze, I can add more haze, but because the way that dehaze works in Capture One, it darkened down this area, which is opposite of what I want to do. I grab this picker to select a color that I want to fill this area with haze with that color. So I'm gonna click on the sky to grab some of the bright colors in the sky. I guess it's quite nice. So let's see if I reduce the opacity, bring it up again before and after, what it does. And because it's brighten up this section, it reduced the contrast to add haze. I guess that helps with the depth of the image, and also this section that the rocks are very close to the horizon, they become a little bit less like a tension point. Still, I cannot fix it completely, but it helps a little bit. Also, I will move up the black points in the curve tool and add a little bit of the curve to this to flatten up these, brighten up the shadows, darken down the highlights to make it a little bit less contrasty. And this is opposite of the S-curve, basically. I think that's good, but it's affecting this part of the rocks a little bit too much. So what I can do is grab a eraser brush, a little bit bigger brush, soft brush, and very low amount of flow. It warned me that it's gonna rasterize the filter, so I can't change the radial filter anymore, but that's okay. And we're gonna just remove some of that effect from these rocks, because rocks, I don't want them to become too washed out in that distance. Okay, now let's have a look at what we have done so far and where we are. This is before, this is after. So let's finish it off with two extra steps. First, I'm gonna darken down the foreground. So I'm gonna create a new layer and call it FG for foreground. I also grab a gradient filter again, holding Shift on my keyboard, create a very big and soft gradient filter. And I can reduce the exposure in this area. By reducing the exposure, I actually darkening down everything from shadows to highlights and blacks. That's not what I want to do. I'm gonna change the brightness, reduce the brightness a little bit. It will keep the contrast a little bit in this area, which is good. It mostly affects the midtones. I can turn this layer on and off to see how it affects the image. And the last but not least, I'm gonna add some vignette. First, I'm removing the already vignette that we had from the lens in the image by turning on the light fall off. And then I'm adding the after crop vignette to this image. Now here is the before and here is the after all of my adjustments. One last thing I want to do, I said it several times, but I want to do it one last step on this image, and that's to affect the water a little bit. I think the water now becomes a little bit too not so realistic or a bit too bright perhaps. So I'm going to create a new layer and let's call it C. And this time I'm going to grab the magic brush and click on the water surface. And as you can see, it's selected some of the sky as well. I'm going to add this part to the selection, but I'm going to remove the sky with the eraser tool with 100% flow. A fairly hard brush and big. I'm gonna click on this part left side by holding Shift and click on the other side. It will create a big straight line. Now we can improve the selection with a little bit of brush paint we need, but I'm gonna lower the size of the brush, lower the flow, and just paint over some of these areas as well. Oops. We are in the erase mode. Let's select the brush. Soften up this area that is a little bit harsh. Remove some of the stones or rocks from this selection. You got the idea. You can improve this. Spend more time to make a better selection, but I guess that's good enough for this demonstration. Hit M to hide the mask overlay, and I'm gonna increase the saturation a little bit, make the water a little bit darker, and also reduce the clarity just a bit to remove some of the texture in the water. And here is the before I affecting the water, and this is after. And here is the before our adjustment, and here after. So I've tried to counterbalance some of the adjustment I did and bring back some of the realism into the image. So guys, that's this for this video. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you learned something from it. And if you have more questions about my editing workflow or my how I take my pictures, leave your question or request in the comment section and I will try to make a video about that. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, take care and bye.